Clara Monroe arrived at the apartment complex on a rainy Wednesday afternoon. The moving truck idled at the curb as she fumbled with her umbrella, soaked halfway through despite the short walk from the driver's side. She had only seen the place once before signing the lease. It was cheap, month to month, and close to the hospital where she worked night shifts. The building was old. Not charming old. More like hasn't been painted since the 90s old. The kind of place where the carpet in the hallway always smells faintly damp, no matter the season. Unit 2B was small but functional. One bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and a living room with windows overlooking the parking lot. No balcony. No laundry in unit. But at $1,200 a month, Clara had nothing to complain about. Not anymore. Her divorce had drained most of her savings. After 14 years of marriage, she had nothing left but an ugly couch, a set of mismatched dishes, and a half-empty bottle of sleeping pills in her bag. The landlord, Mr. Beck, was a wiry old man with nicotine fingers and a permanent scowl. He had shown her the place in a hurry and barely spoke. Clara didn't care. As long as she had keys, heat, and silence, she could make it work. The first 2 nights passed without event. Clara spent most of her time unpacking and trying to get her body clock to adjust to the new shift rotation. She worked nights at the medical center, 12-hour stretches filled with alarms, code calls, and the occasional drunk with a cracked skull. Coming home at sunrise, she welcomed the quiet. It was on the 3rd night that Clara heard it. A soft tapping sound, just past 3 in the morning. She had been lying in bed, half dreaming, when it came, 3 faint knocks, slow and rhythmic, right beneath her bedroom floor. She sat up, listening. Nothing followed. Just the groan of the building and the hum of her mini fridge. She told herself it must be pipes or an old heater kicking in somewhere. But the next night, it happened again. This time, the taps came earlier. A dragging noise followed them, like someone pulling a heavy bag across the floor. Then silence. Clara went down to the 1st floor the next afternoon. The unit below hers, 1B, was locked. The windows were dark. A layer of dust clung to the sill. No curtains. No sign of life. When she called the landlord, he was blunt. "That unit's empty," he said. "Has been since March. Ain't nobody down there." Clara hung up, unsettled. She didn't mention the noises. She didn't want to sound crazy. But that night, the sounds came again. Slower this time. Closer. She pressed her ear to the floor. She could hear breathing. Faint, raspy, deliberate. Then it stopped. She lay in the dark for the rest of the night, eyes wide, listening for any sign that what she heard was real. In the morning, she went downstairs again. The door to 1B was still locked. Still dusty. Still abandoned. But this time, she saw something new. Just beneath the doorframe, barely visible, was a thin strip of white paper. Folded neatly. Slid through from the inside. Clara crouched down and reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the edge, a shadow moved across the peephole. She froze. There was someone standing behind the door. Clara stared at the strip of paper in her hand. It was torn from a cheap notepad, the edges jagged. The handwriting was rough, in all lowercase, as if written in a hurry. "Don't trust the landlord. He knows." That was all it said. No name. No date. No explanation. She looked up at the peephole again, but the shadow was gone. The hallway stood empty. Silence pressed in from all sides. Clara shoved the note into her pocket and walked quickly back upstairs, locking her door behind her. The rest of the day passed in a daze. She tried to sleep, but the mattress felt harder than usual, her room colder. Every creak in the ceiling made her sit up. Every passing car outside sent shadows crawling across her walls. By nightfall, she was jumpy. She took a long shower, drank a cup of herbal tea, and turned on her white noise machine. But it didn't help. At 2:18 a.m., the sounds returned. Then the dragging noise again. Heavier now. Slower. As if whatever was moving below her had gotten weaker or larger. Clara stood in her hallway in bare feet, staring down at the floor. She clenched her fists, heart racing. This time, she grabbed her phone. She opened her voice recorder and held it close to the floorboards. The tapping continued, followed by that same wheezing breath she'd heard before. Then, faintly, something new. Words. A voice, muffled by the floor, whispering through layers of wood and insulation. She couldn't make out what it said, but it was trying to speak. It was trying to reach her. Her hands trembled as she hit stop on the recording. She played it back immediately. Silence. No tapping. No breathing. No voice. The file was blank. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone, her breath shallow. She needed to do something. In the morning, she visited the leasing office a few blocks away. Mr. Beck wasn't there. A young woman behind the glass told her he rarely came in unless rent was late. Clara asked for the history of Unit 1B. The woman hesitated. That unit's been listed as under repair since early spring, she said. Mold issue, I think. I can't rent it out until maintenance clears it. Why? Clara lied. She said she heard noises at night, maybe a rodent problem. The woman jotted a note and said she'd send someone by to check. Clara knew they wouldn't. That night, Clara tried to record again. She stayed up, light off, sitting cross-legged in her living room, phone in hand, listening. At 1:42 a.m., she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Moving directly beneath her. She started recording. This time she caught it. Breathing. Dragging. And then, her name. Clara. Right beneath her. As if someone had whispered it through the floor. She dropped the phone, heart pounding. In the silence that followed, she heard something else. Her front door handle turning. Slowly. Someone was trying to come in. Clara didn't move. She stared at the door handle as it twitched once, then again, softly turning as if whoever was on the other side didn't want to be heard. Her heart hammered in her chest. Her phone was still on the carpet, screen glowing with the paused audio recording. The only sound now was her own breathing. She crept toward the kitchen, reaching slowly for the drawer where she kept a rusted pair of scissors. It was all she had. The handle stilled. She waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. Clara forced herself to exhale and stepped forward. She looked through the peephole. No one. She opened the door a crack and peeked into the hallway. It was empty, quiet, dimly lit by the flickering overhead bulb. The same bulb that always buzzed slightly when it got cold. She checked the locks. Both were still engaged. The chain was in place. No sign of forced entry. She closed the door again, locked it, then slid the heaviest chair she owned in front of it. Just in case. The next morning, she listened to the audio again. The voice whispering her name was still there. She took the recording to work. During her break, she played it for her coworker, Kim, a night nurse she trusted. Kim leaned in, frowning. I don't hear anything, she said. Clara rewound and replayed the clip. Right there. Didn't you hear it say my name? Kim shook her head, her face softening. Clara, are you sleeping enough? I know the new shift is brutal. Clara didn't argue. She just nodded and changed the subject. But the doubt was starting to eat at her. That night, the hallway outside her apartment smelled different. It hit her the moment she stepped out to collect her mail. A thick, sour scent. Like damp earth mixed with rot. Faint but undeniable. There was no mail in her box. There never was. She rarely got anything except hospital memos and the occasional late bill. She passed the door to Unit 1B on her way back upstairs. This time, the door was slightly open. Just a sliver. A line of black in the middle of the frame. Like a mouth waiting to speak. She stood frozen in the stairwell, staring at it. Then the sound came. A soft creak from deep inside the apartment. As if someone had shifted their weight. As if they were standing just beyond the shadows, waiting. Clara stepped closer. She reached out and pushed the door open with her fingertips. The inside of the unit was pitch black. No furniture. No curtains. The walls were bare and cracked. The air smelled of mildew and something else, something sharp and chemical. She stepped inside. The floor creaked beneath her. She moved slowly, cautiously, deeper into the dark space, using her phone's flashlight. The living room was empty. The kitchen counters were coated in dust. A dead moth lay curled in the sink. She turned toward the bedroom. That's when she saw it. Something had been scratched into the far wall. Dozens of thin, jagged lines overlapping, carved deep into the plaster. A single word repeated again and again, almost frantic. Sit, 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 sit. She turned to leave. The door slammed shut behind her. Clara's breath caught in her throat. The door had slammed with such force it rattled the frame. She ran to it, gripped the handle and twisted. But she yanked harder. Nothing. No give. No click. It was as if the door had never had a knob at all. Her flashlight shook in her hand as she turned back toward the dark apartment. The air had grown heavier, humid, thick with that sour smell. Her skin prickled. The shadows seemed darker now, the silence deeper. She tried her phone. No signal. No Wi-Fi. No bars. No way to call for help. She pounded on the door with her fists. "Hey! Is anyone out there?" she shouted. "Hello?" Her voice bounced flatly off the walls. No answer. Not even footsteps from upstairs. No movement outside. She forced herself to think. The windows. She turned and hurried to the living room. But when she reached the blinds and pulled them open, she froze. There were no windows. Where there had been a large glass pane overlooking the parking lot, there was now just more wall. Seamless. As if the window had never existed. She stumbled back, flashlight beam darting wildly around the room. She needed out. She tried the kitchen. She opened every cabinet, every drawer, looking for anything she could use, something sharp, something heavy. But everything was empty. Except for one thing. On the floor beneath the sink, half buried in dust, was a shoe. A single, mud-caked sneaker. Child-sized. She picked it up with 2 fingers. The rubber was stiff with age. Someone had drawn a tiny star on the toe in blue ink. She dropped it and stepped back. Her heel hit something soft behind her. She turned. A blanket lay in the center of the floor. Folded. Clean, unlike everything else. And next to it, resting upright, was a paper cup filled with water. Condensation ran down the sides like it had just been poured. Clara's heart pounded in her ears. She hadn't seen those things before. She had checked every inch of this room minutes ago. She knelt beside the cup and touched the water. Cold, fresh. Her flashlight flickered. She slapped it once, and the light steadied, but only for a moment. Then she heard it. Movement. Not footsteps. Something softer. A dragging sound, slow and steady, from the back bedroom. The same sound she had heard night after night from her own apartment. Clara backed toward the door. The sound grew louder. Closer. Then, from the darkened hallway, came a shape. Crawling. Pale hands pulling a thin body across the warped floor. Its face hidden behind long strands of wet hair, limbs stiff, jerking, unnatural. She screamed and threw herself at the door again. This time it opened. She fell backward into the hallway, gasping, crawling away on her hands and knees. The door to 1B stood wide open behind her. But the apartment beyond it was gone. In its place was an empty shell, no walls, no rooms. Just concrete. Clara scrambled to her feet and ran upstairs without looking back. She locked herself inside her unit and slid to the floor, still shaking. On her phone screen, 2 new things appeared. The first was a notification. Voice recording saved. 2 minutes, 37 seconds. The second was a new file. One she hadn't made. It was labeled simply, "Listen." Clara stared at the file name. Listen. It hadn't been there before. She checked the timestamp, 3:09 a.m., minutes after she'd escaped the apartment downstairs. Her finger hovered over the screen. She hit play. The recording began with static. A low hum, like the buzz of old speakers or a detuned radio. Then came the breathing. Raspy, wet, uneven. Followed by the dragging. And then, unmistakably, her own voice. "Is anyone out there?" it said. The same words she had screamed in panic. Except, she hadn't recorded that moment. She had dropped her phone long before that. Her voice played again, but this time warped. Slower. As if something was mimicking her. "Is anyone there?" Then, something else. A new voice. Quiet. Deliberate. "You went inside. Now it knows you." The recording cut off. Clara dropped the phone and backed away from it like it might burn her. Her mouth had gone dry. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She didn't sleep that morning. When the sun finally rose, she took her keys, her bag, and drove. She didn't know where she was going, just somewhere that wasn't that building. She ended up parked at a strip mall on the edge of town, staring at a faded billboard for a dentist's office. Her phone buzzed in the passenger seat. A new voicemail. No number. She tapped play, and for 10 full seconds, there was nothing but breathing. Then again her name. Clara. Same voice as the night before. Only this time, it sounded closer. She shut off her phone and sat motionless behind the wheel, trying not to cry. Back at the hospital, she was too distracted to focus. Her shift blurred past, patients, for bags, pagers chirping, overhead codes. She was slower than usual. Missed details. Kim pulled her aside around 4 a.m. You look like hell, she said softly. Go get a coffee. Sit down. You're scaring the new techs. Clara nodded and escaped to the break room. She didn't get coffee. She took out her phone and opened her audio recorder again. This time, she spoke directly. If anyone's hearing this, I live in Ridgeview Apartments. 2nd floor. Unit 2B. There's something wrong with the unit beneath mine. I don't know if it's a person or something else. But it's watching me. Following me. It knows my name. And I think it's getting closer. She hit stop and saved the file. She didn't send it to anyone. She didn't know who would believe her. When she got home that morning, a paper envelope was taped to her door. No stamp. No name. Just her unit number written in shaky ink. Inside was a photograph. Black and white. Faded. It showed a girl, maybe 8 or 9, standing in what looked like the living room of Unit 1B. The layout was the same. The carpet, the wallpaper, even the cracked window frame. But the walls were covered in writing. Just one word, again and again. Sit. And standing behind the girl, barely visible in the shadows, was something else. A figure. Thin. Crooked. Its face turned away, hair hanging in wet ropes, hand outstretched toward the child. Clara dropped the photo and stepped back from her door. When she turned around to unlock it, her apartment door was already open. Waiting. Clara stood frozen on the threshold of her own apartment. The door was wide open. She had locked it that morning. She was sure of it. Double-locked, as always. The chair she'd wedged under the knob the night before was no longer there. She hadn't moved it. She stepped in cautiously, calling out. Hello. Silence. Nothing looked touched. Her coat still hung on the hook. The lights were off. But something in the air had changed. The apartment smelled different now. Not rot. Not mold. Something metallic. Like rust. Or dried blood. She picked up the photo she had dropped outside. The girl's eyes stared blankly at her. The figure in the background was blurred, half hidden in the shadows. She flipped the photo over. Scratched into the back were words etched in jagged, torn ink. It lives in the silence. Don't let it hear you breathe. She dropped the photo and turned toward her bedroom. Slowly, quietly, she passed the hallway mirror and froze. Her reflection didn't match her. It was her body, her clothes. But her reflection wasn't moving. Its head stayed tilted slightly to the side, watching her. Breathing. Her real chest wasn't rising. But the reflection's was. She backed away, refusing to blink. The lights in her apartment flickered once. Then again. And then the reflection smiled. Not wide. Not cartoonish. Just enough. Clara turned and ran to the kitchen. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and opened the last voicemail again. She listened closely. There, layered under the whisper of her name, was another sound. One she hadn't noticed before. Scratching. Rhythmic. Faint. As if someone were clawing at something. Trying to get through. She held her breath and followed the sound. To the far wall in the bedroom. The noise got louder as she approached. Just beneath the surface. She leaned in. Placed her palm flat against the drywall. The scratching stopped. Then came a thump. From inside the wall. Then again. Clara stumbled back, heart in her throat. She turned to run, and all the lights went out. Complete, suffocating blackness. She fumbled for her phone. The screen flickered, then died, leaving her in silence. Until something whispered. Right behind her ear. Found you. She screamed and threw herself forward, scrambling down the hallway. She reached the front door and yanked, but it wouldn't open. Her hands searched for the locks in the dark, her fingers numb, uncooperative. Behind her, the bedroom door creaked open on its own. She could hear it, breathing again. Closer now. She gave the knob one final pull. The door flew open and she tumbled into the hallway. Noise. Safety. She scrambled to her feet and didn't look back. Not once. Down the stairs. Out into the cold morning air. She ran barefoot across the sidewalk to her car and locked the doors with trembling hands. Inside, she sobbed. Violently. Desperately. The kind of sob that had no voice left. Her phone buzzed again. One new message. It was a photo of her sleeping, taken from inside her apartment. Clara stared at the photo on her phone. There was no mistaking it. Her own body, curled on her side in bed, the pale blue blanket drawn to her shoulders. But the angle wasn't possible. It had been taken from above her head, like someone had stood right next to the mattress. Inches from her. Her blinds had been closed that night. Her bedroom door had been locked. There was no way that photo should exist. Her hands shook as she deleted the image, but even then, the ghost of it stayed in her mind. She couldn't go back to Ridgeview. Not now. Not after that. She drove to Kim's place just after sunrise. Kim answered the door in scrubs, ready for work, her expression softening when she saw Clara's face. "I need to stay somewhere," Clara said. "Just for a night. I think someone's been in my apartment." Kim didn't ask questions. She handed Clara her spare key and left for her shift without prying. Clara tried to sleep on the couch, but her mind wouldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined the whisper. "Found you." She checked her phone repeatedly. No new messages. No new voicemails. But one file in her voice recorder was acting strange. Track 07.wave. Size, 0 bytes. Timestamp, 4:44 a.m. She hadn't recorded anything at that time. She tapped it. The file opened anyway. White noise crackled. Then a soft voice, distorted but familiar. "You shouldn't have left." She tossed the phone across the room. That night, she couldn't stay still. She paced. She kept the lights on. She checked every window, every closet. 3 times. When morning came, she decided to go back. Not to move in again, but to confront someone. She needed answers. At Ridgeview's leasing office, she finally found Mr. Beck. Mid-60s. Graying hair. Skin like paper. His face went still when Clara walked in. "I live in 2B, she said. He blinked slowly. "Yes. There's something under my apartment," she said. "You knew that already." He didn't respond. Just looked at her. "Who lived in 1B before?" she demanded. "What happened there?" He sighed and rubbed his eyes. "There was a family," he said. 10 years ago. Mother, daughter. Quiet. Kept to themselves. What happened to them? They disappeared. That's it. There was a police report. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. They just vanished. The unit's been empty ever since." Clara clenched her fists. "Then why didn't you tear it out? Why is it still there?" He looked away. "Some places don't want to be emptied." She stepped back. "You're not even going to pretend you don't know?" "I don't go down there," he said. "You shouldn't have either." He turned and walked into the back room. Clara stood there, heart racing. Outside, the clouds had darkened. The afternoon sky dimmed as if night were coming early. She got in her car and sat behind the wheel, staring at the building. She should have driven away. Instead, she turned off the engine and got out. She walked across the lot, past the dumpsters and the cracked sidewalk, through the side entrance and back into Ridgeview Apartments. The smell met her immediately. Stronger now. Like wet soil and copper. She didn't go upstairs. She went down. Past the first floor. To the basement level. To the boiler room. The hallway was narrow, ceiling low. Pipes ran along the walls like veins. The floor beneath her feet was damp. She found a rusted door with flaking paint. A maintenance label half torn from the frame. The number, 1B. It shouldn't have had a door down here. She touched the knob. It was cold. From behind the door, She heard the dragging sound. And her own voice. Calling out softly. Help me. Clara's hand froze on the doorknob. Her own voice called again, muffled through the door, soft and pleading. Help me. It wasn't a recording. It wasn't an echo. It was current. It was impossible. She yanked her hand back like the metal had burned her. The voice stopped. Silence returned. Heavy. Watchful. She took a step back, but the door creaked open on its own. Just an inch. The darkness behind it was dense. Absolute. The smell poured out stronger now. Earthy and thick, mixed with something older, something that didn't belong in the world above. Clara stared into the black. Then she stepped inside. Her flashlight beam cut a thin tunnel through the dark, revealing a narrow concrete room. Dust coated everything. Spiderwebs hung like drapes. The walls were covered in scratches. Not words this time, just long, deep gouges, like something had been trying to claw its way out. In the far corner was a mattress. Filthy. Flattened by age and weight. Above it, a small vent, barely wider than a shoebox. Clara's light caught on something sticking out from under the bed. She crouched, pulled it free. The toy. A small plush rabbit, stained and torn. A child's name stitched on the side in faded thread. The same name from the police report. The missing girl. She held the toy close, breathing fast, her fingers trembling. That's when she saw the hatch. A wooden square in the far wall, partially hidden behind broken shelves. It wasn't part of the original structure. The frame was rough. She pulled the shelves aside, revealing it fully. There was a lock. Old, rusted. But it was already unlatched. The second her fingers touched the hatch, the rabbit in her hand twitched. She dropped it and stumbled backward, heart slamming in her chest. The hatch creaked open by itself. And behind it, wooden steps. Leading down. She backed away, shaking her head. No, she whispered. No, I'm not doing this. The flashlight flickered, then died. She was swallowed in black. And then the whisper came. Not hers. Not the little girl's. Something else. Down here. Something moved in the darkness behind her. She ran. Up the steps. Through the boiler room. Down the basement hall. She didn't stop until she burst out the back exit into the cold air and collapsed on the pavement, gasping, shaking. She stayed there until the sun began to rise. But even in the daylight, something followed her. Every time she blinked, she saw that hatch. Every time she turned, she thought she saw movement just out of reach. She didn't go back to work. She didn't return Kim's texts. That night, in a cheap roadside motel, Clara scrolled through her saved voice recordings. Track 07.wave was gone. In its place, a new file had appeared. No name. No timestamp. Just a black square. She tapped it. Silence. Then a child's voice. You found my rabbit. And beneath that, layered softly behind the words, a second voice whispered. Now we'll find you. Claire returned to work 3 days later. She hadn't slept. Not really. Her eyes were red, her skin pale, her hands jittery. But she needed the routine. The light. The people. Anything to keep her mind from drifting back to that hatch. Back to her. The hospital looked the same. Fluorescent lights. The low hum of monitors. The occasional sound of someone crying behind a curtain. But Clara saw the differences. The long hallway lights flickered more than usual. The reflective glass by the stairwell caught her movements, but not always in sync. And the security mirror in the supply room showed her standing still even after she'd already stepped away. Kim noticed first. You're not okay, she said. You shouldn't be here. Clara forced a smile. I'm fine. You look like you haven't slept since Tuesday. I said I'm fine. Kim didn't press further, but her eyes said she didn't believe it. That night, Clara was assigned to a quiet wing, old palliative care rooms, mostly unused now. She didn't question it. Fewer people meant fewer eyes. Room 411 had a light on when she passed. The patient file said it was empty. She stepped inside. The room was cold. Colder than the rest of the floor. The windows were closed, the vents silent. A child's voice spoke behind her. You left me there. Clara spun. The room was empty. She checked the closet. The bathroom. Nothing. But when she turned back to the bed, the plush rabbit was sitting there. The same one. Myra's. The stains, the torn stitching, exact. She didn't touch it. She backed out slowly and shut the door, locking it behind her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. No number. Just a voicemail. She almost didn't listen. But she had to. It started with static. Then a sound that nearly made her vomit. Wet breathing, close to the microphone. Labored. Starving. Then the voice. Not Myra's. Not Clara's. Something ancient. We remember the ones who open doors. She threw the phone against the wall. The hallway lights all went out at once. Pitch black. The only light came from room 411. Its door was now open. The rabbit was gone. She turned to run, but her feet wouldn't move. She looked down. Shadows were creeping up from under the floor. Thin tendrils of darkness, like smoke, wrapping around her ankles, tightening. A whisper curled up from beneath her, seeping into her bones. You brought her back. The lights flicked on again. The hallway was empty. Her feet were free. She ran. All the way to the ER wing, where the noise of life still buzzed. But even there, the shadows lingered. She could feel them just beyond the corners. Pressing in. She tried to tell Kim everything. Kim just shook her head. You need help, Clara. Clara laughed, but it came out hollow. I think it's too late for that. That night, before leaving, Clara found a single note taped to her locker. It was on old paper. Yellowed at the edges. A child's handwriting. 3 words. She's not done.